Sponsors. Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Welcome, everyone, to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I'm so happy that you could join us today for another wonderful program. This show is for non-paid family caregivers and other people who want to learn more about caregiving for someone who can't care for themselves, especially for people that have Alzheimer's disease or some other related dementia. So we focus on educating caregivers about dementia-related topics, about things that caregivers need to know as they go along their journey of caregiving. Because face it, if you're a caregiver, chances are you didn't go to college to learn how to be a caregiver or took a training class to know what to do before you had to do it. So this show was designed just for you so you could learn along the way. We bring experts from various fields here to you via your computer, your telephone, so you can learn and be prepared. And that's what it's all about, is being educated and being prepared so that you can be a better caregiver and have better outcomes in your caregiving efforts. So if you're a caregiver, I'm sure you may have heard some questions like, well, what level is your loved one at? Do you know where it's going? You might have adult children. If you're a caregiver for a spouse, that might say, Mom or Dad, where do you see Mom or Dad? You know, how are things going? What is coming next? What level are they? If you're a caregiver, you might be wondering yourself, how will I know when things get to another level, and is that normal for that level in the disease process? And what kinds of things will I expect to see as things change? These are hard questions, and the answers are hard too, but it's better to know and be prepared than to not know. So today we have an expert in the field of dementia care who's going to be talking about how to assess someone that has memory loss to see where they're at and where they're going. And it's a very helpful tool. And this tool is called the FAST tool, F-A-S-T. It actually stands for Functional Assessment Staging Tool. And it was actually developed by the New York University Medical Center's Aging and Dementia Research Center by Dr. Barry Reesberg and his colleagues. And this is a tool that caregivers and professionals can use to chart, if you will, the decline of people that have dementia. And we're going to find out why that's important and how this actually works. So joining me today via her telephone in her office in Fort Myers, Florida, is Teele Cunningham. Now, Teele is a certified dementia practitioner and a memory care advisor with the Arden Courts Memory Care Community in Fort Myers, Florida. And we just put her picture up there on the screen if you're watching us on the internet. If you are listening on the telephone, you'll be able to listen to everything Teele has to say because she is exceptional at what she does. So, hello, Teele. Welcome to the Caregiver Solution Info Show.
Well, hello, Marcia. Thank you so much for having me on this evening. It truly is an honor and a pleasure to be a part of this.
Well, thank you for joining us. We are talking about and for and to caregiving, and you're an expert because, first of all, your designation is a certified dementia practitioner. Why don't you explain in a couple words what that actually means and how do you get to be a certified dementia practitioner?
Thank you, Marcia. So, to become a certified dementia practitioner, you have to continue educational courses that specify in Alzheimer's and the various forms of dementia. There's various courses that make you a CDP. That's what we call it, a CDP. So what it is basically it's certification for those who are interested in learning a more comprehensive dementia education, to value our dementia education, and we are very committed to assisting the caregivers and their loved ones who have Alzheimer's and dementia. It also, by going through this certification and continuing the education, we're able to do assessments and help families with transitioning.
Well, I think that's great because not only do you have that certification as a certified dementia practitioner, but you've also been in the field helping caregivers and helping seniors for over 20 years. And I know that you have a passion about doing that, and combine that, your experience with your knowledge, makes you the perfect guest today to talk to caregivers and help them through this difficult topic we're going to be talking about today. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, Marcia.
So, like I said, this is a tool, right, that was developed through the New York University Medical Center Aging and Dementia Research Center, and that's great. But first, I want to ask you, why is it important to make an assessment of different stages that a person with memory loss might be in? I mean, sometimes people just say, well, they're early stage, they're middle stage, they're late stage. It can get a little bit more detailed than that. And why is that important to know?
Well, Marcia, I think a big part of this is our caregivers today, they often want to hang on to the very best day that they're having with their loved one who has Alzheimer's or dementia or mild cognitive impairments, whatever the situation may be, and they're not looking at the whole picture. They're saying, well, he's not that bad, she's not that bad. No, she can still dress herself, she can still sit down and read a book or read the newspaper, but they don't realize that a lot of this is masking, or they're just doing repetitive items that they've always done. For example, reading the newspaper, they may not be able to follow reading the newspaper or only picking out one or two words, or they're just looking at the pictures, but it was a habit to them. So I think it's important that caregivers understand what stage their loved one is in, whether it's, just normal older adult with just your forgetfulness as we're all aging, or if it's early Alzheimer's disease or mild, moderate, moderately severe, or severe. And knowing where you are on the scale helps you to decide what plans to make and how to prepare for the next step and to understand what the next step is going to be.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because if you don't know where you're going, how can you prepare for it, right?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, Marcia, not everybody has truly put together all their plans. I just had a memory cafe today, and one of the things that we discussed was you can't just have a plan A and a plan B. with this disease, you need to have a plan A, B, C, D, and E, because if A, B, C, and D fail, you need to be able to go to E.
That's right. That's right. You got to have a backup to your backup.
Absolutely.
And I also say go with the flow, because sometimes you try to do your A or B and it's going to naturally take you to another place, and you just have to be very flexible and go there. So I think today, talking about this assessment tool, this functional assessment tool, is going to help caregivers plan for that, to see where their loved one might be today, where they're headed, and then what they need to do to get ahead of it so that they're prepared for when things change. So I'm so happy that you're here today, because this is the first time we've talked about this functional assessment staging on this program, and I want you to just dive in and explain it, go through some of the details of it, and just share with the caregivers what they need to be looking at and how does it all come together so they can make a true, honest assessment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marcia. So the functional assessment staging, also known as FAST, thank you for talking about how Dr. Reisberg and his colleagues developed this. And basically, it is answering the questions that they have and marking and checking the highest level of your loved one's disability. But I think where the hard part comes in, Marcia, is people have to be brutally honest about it. For example, there's different areas. The first one is no difficulty either with subject or object, that this person can speak about a subject, speak about an object, not have difficulty, holding on to the conversation. And many times people will say, well, yeah, but, Dad gets a little confused. We might be talking about football, but Dad's talking about baseball. Well, that's not having difficulty. That is having some difficulty. So many times we like to mask over or come up with an excuse when we're checking off these different levels of disability.
Yeah, that's the tough part, because you have to be aware and then be honest about everything, because it's not going to help matters if you're not. So it sounds like this assessment tool sort of goes in a line, I guess you'd say, from highest functioning with factors that as people decline, the behaviors or the things that they're doing or saying, or the things that the caregiver is seeing, would go from best to worse. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, so what a caregiver then has to do is look through this tool and, like you said, be brutally honest of where they think on the scale. It's basically a scale. And what is it? How many items on the scale are there about?
So there's 7 different areas that you're checking. And I'll be honest with you, Marcia, the first 4, if someone was to look at this and answer these honestly, they are more of a mild cognitive impairment, or they're at the earliest symptoms of the disease. But as you go on and you're checking, it's everything from requiring assistance to choosing the proper clothing to wear. I mean, here in Southwest Florida, we're supposed to have 30-degree weather tomorrow morning, and if someone has a problem figuring out how to, find their sweater and put it on, or to wear long pants or socks or whatever's needed, and they're going to wear shorts and a T-shirt, they're not making the right decisions. So it's knowing what clothes to wear and to understand the season, or if it's an occasion. And if you're noticing that your loved one is wearing the same clothes over and over again, there's a reason why they do that.
So the tool then sounds like it's fluid, because a person might be needing at one stage, let's say today, because let's say the weather is fine, we're in Florida and you never need a jacket, but when it does get colder, all of a sudden you're seeing that, they don't know how to choose, so maybe we really do have a different stage here that we didn't notice before.
Absolutely.
Wow. So this is going to be great. And we're going to take a first quick commercial break. And when we come back, Teele Cunningham is going to be talking to us and going through the different 7 steps on the scale of the FAST tool for caregivers. So we'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
My guest today is Teele Cunningham. Teele is a certified dementia practitioner and a memory care advisor at the Fort Myers Arden Courts Memory Care Community. She's very passionate about what she does. She helps families transition through the disease process of Alzheimer's or other related dementia and provides education, seminars. She provides information on different stages of the dementia to help caregivers, information on support groups, and many other things. But today, she's here with us live on the telephone from her office in Fort Myers, and we're talking about the Functional Assessment Staging Tool. So, Teele, we started talking about this tool, and you mentioned before break that the first 4 sections. Now, I do have a copy of the FAST tool in my hand, so I can follow along with you. But the first 4, you said maybe that's just somebody with some mild cognitive impairment, early stages maybe of dementia. But I want to talk about MCI for just a second, because we do get older and things change as we get older. But that doesn't mean we're all going to get dementia. And even if we get mild cognitive impairment, that still doesn't mean that it's going to turn into Alzheimer's disease, right?
That's correct, Marcia. I mean, starting at the age of 50, our memory starts to change. So, forgetting an appointment that you had in the calendar for 6 months, those things happen. Or, having some problems, with trying to put together some tasks or putting your events together, keeping your calendar. Those are some things that would fall under mild cognitive impairment or under the earliest, symptoms of the Alzheimer's disease or various forms of dementia. And it's also, as people start to go through this, they also notice that, taking that time to run their personal errands or handling their finances or things like that, it becomes a little bit more difficult for them. But that does not mean, that could just be that they are having, some mild cognitive impairments and that they do not have Alzheimer's. They just may need a helping hand with just those areas.
Right, and I think that's a good point, because we all need to be aware of that. Not only we might see it in ourselves, but if you're a spouse or a adult child and you're with your parents all the time, you start noticing things, and that's when you want to get things checked out to see what is going on, and if it is mild cognitive impairment or if it's something that mimics some type of dementia that actually can be reversed, because there are reversible dementias. But this FAST stage is incredibly helpful, because the first 4, as you mentioned, complained of forgetting about objects and their location. Well, how many times have we said, "Where are my glasses?" and they're on top of our head, right?
Oh, that's so true, Marcia. Actually, that just happened to me over the weekend.
Right. And where did I put my keys? Because I'm not paying attention when I throw them here or there, and they're not always in the same place. Decreased job functioning, evident with coworkers. Sometimes coworkers are the ones that pick up on the fact that maybe you're slowing down. And maybe if your job involves traveling, maybe that's a little harder for you to do. But if there's anybody listening that have any question about some of the behaviors that we'll be talking about today, we want to say right up front, don't rely on this tool. This is a way for you to sort of get a little glimpse into the different stages of dementia, but certainly you need to go to a doctor, your primary care, and get a referral to a neurologist and see what's going on. So we do not want anybody to rely on this tool, but it is helpful, I guess, in conjunction, I would say, with the healthcare professional that you go to. So that being said, Teele, let's go down to number 5. Now, number 5, you said this is where we start seeing some really major changes. Talk about number 5.
So with number 5, it's requiring assistance in choosing the proper clothing to wear for the day, whether it's by season or occasion, or if someone is repeatedly wearing the same clothes over and over again. And it truly shows that they need to have supervision in making sure that their laundry is done, that it's clean, that they're putting on the proper clothes. As we had mentioned, here we are in Southwest Florida. Most of the time we have the wonderful ability to wear shorts and T-shirts and sandals, but tomorrow, it's going to be a colder day. It's supposed to be in the 30s. So if we were to see someone who we've noticed has had some impairments before, or they're not putting on the right clothes, they're not putting on the sweater, they're not putting on the jacket, those are things we need to notice.
That would be a red flag.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if somebody was at that level, that would indicate their best self at that time. But then we go on because number 6 talks more in detail about those clothing and putting them on. So let's go on to number 6 and let's go into detail about each one, because I think this is really where gets pretty evident that something is seriously wrong.
Absolutely, Marcia. So next, it would be putting on clothes without assistance or cueing, but they're not putting them on properly. So an example might be that they have their pajamas on, but they are then putting their pants or their skirt over their pajamas. They're putting 2 shirts and a sweater over their pajama top. Or, they're trying to put a robe over their dress. They're wearing shoes on the wrong feet, or they're having difficulty, buttoning their clothing or snapping the clothes, or tying their shoes, or even the ability to put their foot in their shoe all the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we see so many people with Velcro shoes, or with just the straps that go across. But if you look, many times you'll notice that they're not even pulling those Velcro straps over. So that's definitely another red flag that needs to go up.
Okay, I just have to say this. The other day, a friend of mine had her shirt inside out with the tag on the outside. Should I be worried?
Well, Marcia, I don't think so. I think we've all done that at one point or the other.
Well, that's why I brought it up, because I told her, I'm sure you'd want to know your shirt's inside out. And I think with her, it's just a matter that she was in too big of a hurry and she didn't pay attention. So these things do happen, but what we're talking about is consistency, right?
Absolutely. Or if we're seeing there's consistency, but then we're seeing, for example, a trend with someone.
Right.
So, for example, I met with a family member where the daughter said to me, my dad is constantly wearing the same plaid shirt every single day.
He likes it.
And, my brother told me to stop worrying about it, that my father's always been this way about clothes. But it's to the point now where I'm afraid that he's not bathing, that, odors, that there's not good hygiene. And so I asked her, do you think Dad can still button and snap and do all of these things? Because it was a button-up shirt. And she goes, I never really thought of that. That maybe he can't get the shirt unbuttoned, and that's why he's wearing it.
Yeah, it can get really, really crazy, because I knew a lady that would take her outfit off because she liked it so much she wanted to wear it all the time. So the daughter actually had to go out to the store and buy several of the exact same shirts and the exact same pants so that they would have them clean, so that the mother would put them on. And it was the same exact outfit, or the same outfit, but not that one. At least she got to wear it, and then they got to wash and have the exact same one on while the other one was in the washing machine. I mean, sometimes that's what you have to do if they don't want to change their clothes, and caregivers find out tricks of the trade, so to speak, to get around these types of things. So that's definitely a big sticking point right there, is changing clothes. What about the next one? Unable to bathe properly. Tell me about that one.
And Marcia, that's truly a very big point that people really need to look at, especially if we're noticing also some continence issues, which I know that we're going to get into a little bit further down. But if they're not able to bathe properly, that means that they can't really adjust the water temperature properly, and that they're not bathing frequently, or that they're afraid of the water, which that is consistent with people that have Alzheimer's and dementia. Having the water hit their face, it scares them, and also not being able to adjust it. And there's also fall risk. If they slipped when they were trying to get into a tub, especially if they didn't have a walk-in shower, now they're afraid of it. So that can also be a problem with being unable to bathe properly or have proper hygiene. If they don't have the proper hygiene, that can lead to other issues like urinary tract infections and other issues. And that's something that I think all caregivers, family members, loved ones, they really need to pay attention to that area.
Yeah, because that can lead to its own difficult problems. But what about, let's say, a mom who maybe always was very meticulous, but the daughter is now the caregiver and is around her really for the first time in years, and the mom doesn't want to take a shower every single day. Should the daughter be worried? Is that a problem if maybe she wants to do it every other day?
Marcia, that's not a problem at all. We also have to remember that as we get older, our skin is thinner. So it's actually, if they can shower every other day and still maybe sponge bath in between, make sure that they're able to get deodorant and antiperspirant on, make sure that they're getting lotion on their skin. I think that's important. Every other day is fine. In some cases, I know people that, they're just doing it 2 times a week, but they're in between, they're doing some sponge baths, and they're making sure that, they're getting their face washed in the morning and the evening and constantly washing hands, and they're doing just fine. But they do need to have, at the very least, a couple times a week.
And that's important, too, because some caregivers are meticulous and might want to insist that, oh, no, he has to have a shower every single night, and that causes fights with your loved one. It's hard to get them in. They're arguing, they're being stubborn, and it's causing some relational problems as well as some negative behaviors. So I guess the point to this one is for caregivers, let up a little bit, as long as, like you said, they're clean, maybe in between doing alternate types of cleaning. It's not, the end of the earth if they don't take a shower every single day and you're able to keep them clean. So, again, these are all assessment tools of what we're seeing, but when you are making the assessment, you want to be also reasonable about it, right?
Absolutely. I think that we need to keep the following information in our head. we need to redirect and not correct. So, for example, if the daughter that wants her mom to shower every night and mom has not showered every night for several years, she hasn't lived with her daughter until recently, there needs to come to an agreement for them.
A compromise.
Absolutely. So instead of trying to correct her mother to go with her flow, she needs to redirect the situation. So instead of showering one night, redirect Mom, let's make sure you get your sponge bath, and then I bought this really nice lotion. It smells so good. I want to make sure I get it on your arms and legs tonight.
We're going to have a spa night.
Absolutely.
I love that. Okay, so we talked about bathing. This one is probably one of the sticklers for caregivers when we get to the part where people cannot toilet themselves properly. I know a lot of caregivers have told me in the past, once my husband, can't wipe himself, I'm done. That's my limit. That's my boundary. Let's talk a little bit about that on this tool.
Absolutely, Marcia. So as we see many of our different loved ones who have various forms of dementia and Alzheimer's that they're forgetting to flush the toilet, or they're not wiping themselves properly. They're not properly disposing the toilet tissue. And it's continuing. It's a continuing effect. Or they're not wiping at all, or they're missing when they're missing their aim, I guess is the best way to put it. That is a situation that can lead to other issues and problems. First of all, the hygiene issue, that's a major problem, number one. Number two, that task, if they're no longer able to handle it, we're moving into a different direction with the disease.
Right.
And that's where people really have to have an understanding of where are they going to be to help them through this process.
Okay.
And I know you're right. Many caregivers say, I can't do it when it comes to incontinence issues or the inability to toilet themselves properly. And it's very difficult for the caregivers.
Absolutely. So backing up just a moment, we talked about the functional assessment staging, the 1 through 4. We decided that is somebody who's either a normal adult, maybe a normal older adult, or maybe somebody with, an early dementia diagnosis or mild cognitive impairment. So we say maybe 1 through 3. But then we talked about number 4, about decreased ability to perform complex tasks. And we talked about maybe planning a dinner, handling your finances. I just want to make a note that according to this assessment tool, a person in 4 would be what we would call in the mild Alzheimer's disease stage. And I just want to mention that because now we're talking about 5 and 6. So as we go along, I want to actually put them in the stage according to this tool so our listeners can actually follow along with us. So 1 through 3, normal to early mild cognitive impairment. Stage 4 requires assistance in complicated tasks. Stage 5, we talked about the bathing, and we went into pretty much detail about about clothing, about picking out clothes. And according to the FAST tool, that would be somebody who probably would be considered moderate stage with Alzheimer's disease when they can't button and pick out clothes and they are dressing inappropriately. And now we're on to 6, and there's a lot of things in 6. So we've talked about putting on clothes without assistance, bathing properly, and now we're talking about toileting. If any of this rings true to you as the listener, the stage 6, we are actually talking about moderately severe Alzheimer's disease according to the stages in the scale of the functional assessment. So this is where we're at right now, moderate to severe. And under moderate to severe, Teele, not putting proper proper clothes on or putting them on improperly, unable to bathe properly, unable to handle the mechanics of toileting. And the next one under this stage is urinary incontinence. We mentioned that a minute ago, but talk about why it's important to keep on top of this particular issue.
So, Marcia, with urinary incontinence, a lot of different things can happen. Number one, you can have breakdown of the skin if you're not making sure that they're properly cared for. It's very poor hygiene. It is not doing or preserving, I should say, the loved one's dignity. And it's also, you find that a lot of other problems can happen from that. So, yes, you can have urinary tract infections, but then there's also rashes that can develop, and like I said, skin breaking down, and other issues come from that.
So when
that exasperates the disease as well.
Yes. So when someone has Alzheimer's disease, has this memory loss, and they get a urinary tract infection, how does that change their behavior, or can it change their behavior?
Oh, it certainly can change their behavior. You can see people, things that you never thought somebody would do, or the way that they would speak with you, or a behavior totally changes. If somebody has a urinary tract infection, and I'll give you an example. I know of a gentleman who is very sweet and kind, and he loves singing along with music, and he loves to take his walks and garden, and just very sweet-natured. When he had a urinary tract infection, it truly exasperated his dementia, and he went from this very sweet, kind person to a gentleman who was constantly banging on walls and yelling at people, and honestly, you wouldn't even have recognized him just by his behaviors. Now, once that was taken care of, yes, he went back to, I don't want to say the way he was, because it did still change him in so many ways. Yes, it exasperates the disease, and sometimes you can come back from it, but many times you can't, or you can only come back part way from it.
Yeah, and I want to bring this up because sometimes families will say, gee, my mom just changed overnight or in a split of a second from being sweet and kind to being ugly and angry, and I don't know what's going on. So a lot of times we want to say the first thing to look for is a urinary tract infection, because that can cause a sudden change in personality. So thank you for sharing that, Teele. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back with more on the FAST test with Teele Cunningham and get through to number 7 so that you can understand this type of staging tool to help you better care for your loved ones. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Court's Memory Care Communities. Arden Courts has close to 50 memory care communities all across the United States, 10 of them right here in Florida. And Arden Courts is a leader in the field of helping people that have memory loss, but also helping their caregivers. And they would like to offer to you today this free book just because you're listening or watching to this program. And the book is called The 36-Hour Day. It's a wonderful resource, and it's yours for free just by calling the toll-free number. That number is 888-478-2410. Call them, tell them that you heard about the free offer on the Caregiver Solution Info Show, and they'll get your name and address and make sure that they mail a book to you. It's a wonderful resource. It has just all kinds of information in it that you can look up when you need to know something or read it through and through. Either way, you'll be glad that you have this on your shelf as a resource. So call 888-478-2410 to get your copy of the 36-Hour Day book. So my guest today is Teele Cunningham. She is a certified dementia practitioner and memory care advisor, and we're talking about the functional assessment staging test. And we are in the moderately severe, Teele. We've been talking about the different items on the scale, and we're now getting to the last one on number 6, which is in the moderately severe of the fecal incontinence. So we went through urinary and now fecal incontinence or bowel and bladder problems. Again, I think this is pretty obvious and common sense that if someone can't manage that, that's definitely a problem and they would fit into that stage. So let's move on to the last stage, stage 7, according to the FAST test tool, severe Alzheimer's disease. And this is where we get into some other functions that people may exhibit. And the first one is ability to speak. So let's talk a little bit about that. How is this going to be affected, their speaking ability, when they get into this later stage?
So, Marcia, the ability to speak, when we see this happen, we're noticing that they're very limited. They're maybe using half a dozen different words, and sometimes the words are not intelligible. And then this happens over and over, or we find them only repeating one word, or they're making a noise, or humming, or that. Instead of speaking, they're using a different course of action to try and communicate. Or they may be talking, and, for example, I might say, Marcia, it's so good to blueberry bird pick this and the window, and what is coming out of my mouth is not what I'm thinking in my mind, and we call that word salad. So when you have this type of situation with people that they're not able to verbalize what they want or what they need, that is definitely putting you in the category of severe Alzheimer's disease.
Okay, thank you. And along with that, ambulating, people have trouble ambulating. That is also a problem as people age, but also as they not only age, but age with dementia.
Absolutely. That you find that people are having a problem being able to transfer from the bed to stand up, or transfer from their chair, or they're forgetting how to stand up from the chair. Their gait is off. They're starting to shuffle. So the way that they're ambulating is not the same. You might notice that they're leaning to the side, or they're tilting their head when they're walking. So any change that someone has in ambulation needs to be noted right from the beginning.
All right, good point. And 2 more on this list under the severe Alzheimer's disease would be loss of ability to smile. That's one of the last things it says.
Yes, it is, and it's truly, it's so sad. The ability to give facial expressions or emotion. I mean, it's so sad when it comes to that stage. And I think we've all noticed it, any of us that have worked in this field or have worked in a memory care community or know someone with this disease, when they're not able to show emotion or to smile, and you don't even see the emotion in their eyes when they're looking at you, it's very blank. That is truly sad, and that is in the severe stage.
Yeah, that's severe stage, as well as the last one, loss of ability to hold up their head independently. And of course, we've seen people in wheelchairs where their head is just down to their chin, to their chest, or sideways. So any of those would fall into the severe Alzheimer's disease category. So we've gone through the 7 stages, Chalet, and now that we know where our loved one is, how should we use that information?
Marcia, I think, as I said in the beginning of the show, it's very important that anyone who's going through the FAST assessment to be as honest as possible and not just look at the brightest day that their loved one is having, but try to look over everything in a full overview of what's going on with them. To say that everyone has good days and bad days is so true, but you really want to have an idea of where your loved one is at, whether it is, just normal aging in place or mild cognitive impairment, if it's early Alzheimer's or mild Alzheimer's, moderate. And when it goes from moderate to moderately severe and then severe, looking at each of those stages, you need to take those stages and have a plan in place as you reach each stage.
And I think that going one step further with this FAST tool, they actually categorize the stage. Like, let's say you came up with somebody that's in the earliest symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, and they stage going from 3, 4, 5, 6 to 7, they actually relate that stage to a physical age, comparing a person at this stage with an age of a person who didn't have dementia. I think, did I say that right? Because
that is correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
So what's so neat about that is that I think you mentioned before that caregivers sometimes kind of, compensate or cover up or mask the reality of the situation. But if you have this tool and you say, well, my person is at stage 4, which is mild Alzheimer's disease, and you look over on this chart because they can handle some simple finances, but they can't really handle, all the stock investments. According to this chart that was created, they would actually be similar in abilities to an 8 to 12-year-old person.
Correct.
And that is mind-blowing if you think about it. And if you think about these stages and you share this with a caregiver, I bet they'll be very surprised to really figure that out and say, gee, think about it. Would you let an 8-year-old do such and such? Would you let an 8-year-old, drive a car? I mean, this is really helpful for caregivers. And, look at number 5. You'll go ahead and talk about number 5, the moderate stage of Alzheimer's disease, where they need, help in selecting clothing. What age does it say that they would be equal to?
The age would be 5 to 7 years old, Marcia.
So what that means is that we would expect a 5 to 7-year-old to be able to do these things that a person is when they're considered at moderate stage. Is that correct?
That's correct. And excuse me, Marcia, if you even think about it, I mean, how many times has someone let their little kindergartner pick out their clothes and get themselves dressed, and you look and they've got, the shorts on with the long sleeve shirt and one short sock and one long sock and a sneaker and a shoe, and And that's because the kids are experimenting to see where they can go with it. And this could be the same situation for your loved one who has Alzheimer's or dementia. They're not able to comprehend putting together the right outfit, just like someone who's just starting kindergarten.
And kindergartens need a little supervision. I mean, they're trying, and like you said, they're experimenting, but they're learning. But a person with Alzheimer's disease, they forget because they've forgotten what they learned when they were in kindergarten, and that's why we need to help them. And then going to number 6, moderately severe. Talk about that age, because that's even more impressive.
Right. So if the ability is that they can put on their clothes and be able to shower and everything else, but when we're looking at the age range, it's actually from 2 years to 5 years old, Marcia, in that stage 6, the moderately severe Alzheimer's. So it's the same thing that we would expect to see a 2, 3, 4, up to a 5-year-old doing.
And we're not saying that a person, obviously, with Alzheimer's disease who's an older adult or an adult is like a child, and we don't want to confuse that, and we don't want to think of them as children. But this is just a good tool to put in our minds that this is what we expect from this age of a person, and this is what our person with dementia is doing and how it relates. I think it's just very eye-opening. And, of course, the last stage is 7, severe Alzheimer's. And go ahead with that one, too, Teele.
So, Marcia, with the severe Alzheimer's, just to start, like being able to speak 5 to 6 words, that's someone who's about 15 months old. To be able to speak one word and to be able to walk, that's about a year old. To be able to sit upright, you're 6 to 10 months. Smiling is 2 to 4 months. And when we say 2 to 4 months smiling, that's something more consistent with the smiling. To hold the head up is 1 to 3 months. So your severe Alzheimer's disease is anywhere from 1 month up to 15 months.
I think this is so amazing because it lets a caregiver kind of see a little bit more reality and to know, gee, I should not expect of my loved one certain things because this is really what they can only do. And I think that it helps caregivers in a way to not to set up expectations for their loved one when they understand that they just can't do it because you wouldn't expect a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old to do these certain things. And I think in and of that itself should help caregivers understand and set up their caregiving in ways that could make it less frustrating for themselves and for the person they're caring for.
I agree, Marcia. We're looking at 7 different stages for people, and I think that with each stage, people need to have a plan put in place. If your loved one is starting to just be a little forgetful about things, well, what's your step to do if that's the case? Well, I would set up an appointment with their physician. I would keep a log of what's going on with your loved one's life. It's very important to keep things in perspective and to keep things written down and concise, because many times, let's be honest, if you were to send your 3-year-old or 5-year-old in to see a physician and the doctor said, well, how are you doing today? Everything's going to be wonderful. No one is going to say, I'm having a bad day. So I think keeping a log of behaviors and concerns and just different little things that have happened, some changes in your loved one's life, I think it's very important. And taking that time to sit down with the physician and discuss this is also very important. But it's also important to remember the physician is not going to speak to you unless, because of HIPAA, you are the healthcare surrogate or power of attorney, or they have permission from your loved one. That's
right. Well, this has been fascinating talking about this tool. It is actually called the Functional Assessment Staging Tool. Teele, thank you so much for coming on and explaining this and talking to us about this. If someone wants to learn more about this FAST tool and they have questions, may they contact you?
Absolutely, Marcia. They can contact me here at Arden Courts in Fort Myers. Our number is 239-454-1277. Or if they want, they can even call me on my cell number, and that is 239-839-2287. If they'd like to receive a FAST assessment that they can go through, I'd be more than happy to meet with them, send it to them, as well as to speak with them and to go over each of the areas.
Well, that's very, very kind and generous of your time to do that. Thank you for that, Teele Cunningham, certified dementia practitioner and memory care advisor at Arden Courts of Fort Myers. Thank you again, Teele.
Thank you, Marcia.
And thank you all for tuning in and watching. Don't forget, call for your free book, The 36-Hour Day. And in the meantime, don't forget, give someone a hug because they need it and so do you. So take care, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching Caregiver Solutions Info Show.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its host.